Our final panel discussion to get us up to morning tea, after which we break into our parallel streams. Don't forget to take all your stuff with you because we throw the walls up here and break this into 3 separate rooms. Morning tea is your chance to get down there and say hello to our sponsors. Run around with your QR codes on your app, scan all those and go into the running for some fantastic prizes that we'll present this afternoon just before our speed debate. To talk about offensive security, walking the red team line, Anita Sheridan-Roddick from Batum is going to convene our panel. Anita, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So yes, I'm Anita Sheridan-Roddick from Batum, and our topic today is walking the thin red line. And I am very pleased to have some incredible panellists with me today. Mike Loss leads the CrowdStrike JPAC Red Team and is the developer of popular open source red team tools, Snaffler and Grouper. Next to Mike is Craig, an experienced technology leader whose career spans consulting, in-house leadership and vendor-side advisory. And last and most certainly not least is our very own Batum CTO, John Robertson, JR. Thank you for joining us today. An experienced cyber leader, 20 years managing and building security operations centres, offensive security teams and incident response. Thanks, gentlemen. Looking forward to a lively debate. We'll try and stay on topic where we can, but jump in. We've got lots to talk about. Mike, I'd really like to start with you if I can. Expectations. A red team engagement looks very different depending on where you sit. What do you see as the absolute non-negotiable expectation you have from your red teams from a client end versus a supplier?
So I think the most important thing from the client end is that there needs to be kind of absolute clarity about exactly what the purpose is, what you're trying to achieve, what the outcome is that you're looking for, what question you're trying to answer. And from the red team side, at least prior to the engagement start, there needs to be a willingness to kind of push back if the stated objective doesn't actually align with the approach that the customer's asking for. Like, there's a lot of folks who think that there's only one right way to do a red team. It has to be either like a threat actor cover band, like aping TTPs mindlessly off a report, like an Intel report, or they need to be like bringing maximum state level tradecraft to every engagement, and pantsing the sock and doing a burnout in the car park at the end. And it's pretty rare that either of those is going to be the best way to get what the customer actually needs from the engagement.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. John, I've got a question from you off the back of what Mike had to say about what good looks like in engagement. I'd like you to discuss, actually, can one highly skilled expert truly constitute a team?
Well, one individual, yes, they can, but there's a key word in red team, right? So what I see generally in industry is a team approach will generally have a better outcome than just one individual, right? So play to strengths. Some people will be very strong at social engineering, physical breaching. Others will be a lot stronger on the vishing side or the phishing side. And then those that don't like the physical or don't want to be physically anywhere near the client, but excel in domain busting or whatever they need to do to go for the crown jewels. So teaming the strengths together in a coordinated fashion, but also being very adaptable to the situation, because like we see with most red teams, where there's a physical aspect to it, that's a dynamic situation. So I think the team approach is where you're going to get the better outcome.
Craig, you and I have previously spoken about the need for a broader focus across organisational improvement and the need for real-world changes. Goalposts constantly shift, though. What does a win look like at the end of a red team engagement?
What does a win look like at the end of an engagement? I think I'll take the opposite of that. I think we know what a win doesn't look like. A win isn't a 200-page report on a range of exploits. I would say, the conversations I typically have with leaders in the tech space, there's always a bias for action. Focus on the outcome you're looking to achieve. Identifying exploits is fantastic, but really it's about doing something about those exploits. And so I think a good outcome is very much focused on action. And I think actually, JR, to your point, it also leads back to the consideration of teaming and how do you get outside of the red bubble and really think about how do we not only just address this in the moment, but actually how do we create a motion that is more active all the time, where we're really working across teams and across the organisation to be more effective.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think the thing that we're saying here, we're just saying it in different ways, is that first piece of scoping and the commercial aspects of it, understanding what the organisation is looking for. More often than not, we see in industry, we go straight for the technical component. What is the crown jewels that we're trying to smash? But why is the organisation doing a red team? Is it to raise awareness? Is it to unlock board recognition? Is it to unlock budget? What are we trying to unlock from that? And then having the whole team aligned to that. I think that's the key component to it.
Can I stay with you for a minute, JR? You touched on scope creep. How important is the upfront defining of a clear scope, boundaries in red teams, and have you had any experience where it's gone oh so horribly wrong?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. The scope is a very important one, specifically, and look, we need to go back to the fundamentals around offensive security, right? So any industry veteran will most likely agree with this sentiment of offensive security historically was 4 layers: vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, attack simulation, then red team. The industry's blurred the difference between attack simulation and red team. Historically, it's been attack simulation has rules of engagement, which is very pertinent in the scope of works. Red team, less restrictions, so you can go and pick locks or break windows or insert whatever. True red teams, from that description, fairly rare. They still do happen, and they're very... everyone wants to be on a real red team, right? Because you can break locks, steal uniforms, do whatever you want. But from an attack sim perspective, obviously the rules are defined, but it's very important on the scoping aspect to get that right, because if we come out of the bounds of that, and I have seen this happen, where it's been either intentional or non-intentional, you've come out of the scope and gone into a production environment or some environment that you shouldn't be in, it's not a good outcome because you're still going to report on it, right? We saw this in this environment, but the scope said you shouldn't have been there. So it's very important to stay in the realms of the scope.
On what you were saying just now about sort of, the idea of true red team involving the sort of lock picking and physical entry and all that sort of stuff. I think one of the things a lot of organizations maybe mess up when they're engaging with a red team is they sort of buy into the sort of industry enthusiasm around that kind of stuff a bit too much, where and red teamers are absolutely responsible for propagating this, where it's fun to do the breaking in and lock picking and badge cloning and all that stuff, playing James Bond, but for most organizations that's not actually in their threat model. The people that are likely to try and break into their office are more likely to steal their computers for heroin money than they are to try and hack them. So I think, it's a key part of that sort of scoping is going to be making sure it actually aligns with what's reasonable for that organization.
You both actually bring up good points, and that brings me to a topic I would like to explore, and I think it's a conversation we probably need to have: social engineering and the ethical line. We've seen tactics that range from fake IT portals to physically tailgating. Where is the ethical line? Can I start with you, Craig?
The ethical line, it's an interesting question, and we've discussed this a little bit previously. Look, I think for me the point of what we do is really to identify weaknesses in the institutional workflow, what's happening within an organisation, and so there's always the sort of squishy human at the end of that's been a point of risk for a long time. But I think a good approach to security takes account of those vulnerabilities and builds that into the sort of program, the approach that you're building. And so the ethical bit for me really becomes quite challenging when you're pushing a little bit too hard on the squishy human at the end of that. You know, if you're brute forcing your way through the poor receptionist on the front desk and, you know, really looking to apply, you know, oversized effort on the human aspect, I think that's actually a sign of perhaps the approach maybe being having the balance wrong. You know, you need to take account of that vulnerability rather than really going out and trying to, you know, sweat those assets and apply pressure on them. That for me gets pretty ethically challenging.
And like, even if we're being completely heartless pragmatists about it, which by the way I'm not, the question you've got to ask yourself is like, how are your staff going to react when they find out that you paid someone to psychologically manipulate them? Like, and is that going to be worth it? And most of the time the answer is going to be no. Like, if you want to know, you know, how it's going to play out if someone calls up the help desk and says, I know where your kids go to school, we can model that, and we don't have to traumatize your staff to do that, you know? We give us some appropriate creds, we'll start from the right starting point, and we'll see how it plays out. We don't have to make them cry, you know?
All right, let's talk about the psychological fallout. Let's talk about the psychological fallout. So if a red team does leverage deep psychological manipulation, how does an organisation manage the emotional fallout? JR, let's start with you.
Yeah, unfortunately I get pulled into these a lot, where it's an organisation that has that last layer of defence as the squishy human, as Craig said. They have to test if that person is going to follow a process. Example being, red team against a global organisation, their offices are basically internet breakouts, but they did have some core assets on site which required a lot of protection. The reception area was basically cordoned off, and I'd already done phishing exercises, we'd already done social profiling on said receptionist because we basically needed her to let us in. So we orchestrated a situation, there's a bit of chaos in it, and what it basically ended up being is what we set up beforehand with the key stakeholders of the organisation. We do this with everyone where we're intercepting or playing with a human essentially, is that mental barrier of we're going to do this at this time. More often than not, there is going to be a mental impact of some description, especially once they realise what they've just done, aka let us in. And then once we're in, it's free for all, right? So having that I suppose framework there with the key stakeholders when you're going to do that, and then we do it live during the red team. So once we get past that person, we'll already have communication set up on our phone to the key stakeholders, and we'll let them know when it's happened. Soon as that exercise is done, which is usually 5 to 10 minutes, very fast, smash and crash, then the key stakeholders will come and pull that person aside. Either I'll go back into the meeting room with the person and say, sorry, we're doing this exercise, you did really, really well, because I had to push really, really hard. But it's very important to control that outcome in the first few hours. Don't let it go overnight, because if that person goes home and starts thinking about it, then the mental anguish starts.
Yeah, the psychological safety of our employees has to be front of mind. I'd like to explore a little bit, though, the further fallout, and that's across the teams and the potential to create a culture of paranoia. Have you seen that occur, Mike?
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think that's something that, you know, red teams have kind of been responsible for, is creating this like culture of paranoia, like the red team's the enemy, and we're responsible for having built that over the years of, you know, treating the SOC like they're the enemy, and you know, working, you know, treating winning as the outcome that the red team is looking for, not trying to improve the organization's security or trying to, I mean, even sometimes the right objective is trying to frighten the board into providing someone with the budget that they need to improve the organization's security. But yeah, I think as an industry we need to be working to dismantle kind of culture of, or that negative relationship between red and blue, and repair it and get back to a more collaborative, more, working together approach.
That's a really good point, and that actually leads me to my very next question for you.
Sure.
There is that trust deficit between blue and red teams, isn't there? And, at what point during an active long-term engagement should the red team start feeding the blue team, if at all?
Yeah, look, I think this is one of the points where I'll probably get roasted by the one true red team perspectives, but I used to think that the value in a red team was in the surprise and in seeing how the SOC perform under pressure. But as time's gone on, I've really come around to the idea that the real answer should be like day one, like from the very beginning. We should be working, ideally, if the outcomes required support it, we should just be working hand in hand on the same problem from different ends, trying to achieve that outcome, the improvement of security. And you don't do that by leaving blue in the dark, and then at the end of the engagement they get frustrated, they're burnt out because they've had to work late because someone created an incident, and then they find out that all of the interesting stuff happened in a Slack channel that they weren't part of, and they've learned nothing from it until maybe the report readout where they learn a bit. But if you have them on board the whole time, like, we're all learning heaps from each other the whole engagement. So day one is my take.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we're not losing sight of what we're there to do. And, I think, Craig, I'm really interested in what you have to say actually regarding staged environments, which can be safe. And, they don't always reflect the messy reality, do they? So you spend a lot of time with the C-suite. How do you justify the operational risk of testing in a live environment?
Yeah, stage versus live is an interesting discussion. I think, a lot of this, still comes back to the teaming aspect in many ways. Being able to work effectively in a live environment really comes down to your control of that environment, your ability to operate in different ways. I'm not here to sell anything, but I am from Cloudflare, and there's now a lot you can do on the edge to make sure that payloads aren't getting anywhere near your origin, that you're operating in a different way. You can simulate activities, you can run exercises in new and interesting ways that I think creates that confidence that the risk of something going wrong in a sort of production scenario is much lower. And I think it also then, coming back to the broader conversation here, a couple of my favourite words at the moment are observability and control. And I think there's a real need to close the gap between observability and control generally in the world. And so, finding vulnerabilities again and understanding those attack vectors is super important, but actually applying the controls and really making sure that you're actually mitigating those threats is super important. And so whether that's having better control in how you run simulations and scenarios, or how you actually apply controls in a sort of live, ongoing way, is a real opportunity, I think, for organisations to lean into. But it does involve, operating in a more modern fashion, drawing on some different tactics that are available.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing that most of our C-suite want to see is reporting. JR, you and I had a really long conversation about this the other day. I was truly surprised to hear the prevalence of requests to reduce the severity of findings in reports, downgrading critical issues. Is this really true? And how do you handle it?
Yeah, it does happen. It generally is happening if there's an organisation that's fairly immature, or there's 10,000 other problems within that organisation from a cultural perspective.
Or a project manager whose project depends on the lack of high or critical findings.
Yeah, project managers are our friends. So it does happen, and I think it's very important at the start of the engagement, but also in the pre-sales component, even scoping in the documentation, to call out that we will not change severity of the findings. However, if you can provide evidence that that risk may be mitigated, I'm happy to put that into the report from the board level's perspective, and then they can assess their risk based on that, or the leadership team, whatever it may be, can assess the risk based on that mitigating factor. But you do not and should not ever change a finding in a report based on business risk or technical risk.
Gentlemen, I have 42 seconds left.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Mike, I'm really conscious of time.
No problem.
I'm really interested, actually, and 30 seconds now. Each of you, very quickly, what is the most overrated tactic in offensive security today? Go, Mike.
Exploiting bugs in software. Like, bugs get patched, Active Directories forever.
Craig?
Most overrated tactic? Maybe it's a slightly broader reflection, but for me, anything that is overly narrow and very much point in time focus, I think is danger. Beware the false confidence of thinking you've assessed something and you're now in the clear, when actually the world has moved on straight after.
Misguided phishing campaigns. It's business email compromise, yes, it's a big one, but misguided phishing campaigns in a red team, pointless.
Thank you. Could everyone thank me, or join me in thanking these wonderful...
Thank you.
Me. Please thank me.
You're amazing.
Thank you for my wonderful colleagues for joining me today. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank Anita as well. That was an amazing session. It was really, really fascinating. And the humane side of the tech as well. Please take these little gaming consoles. There's 4 of them and there's 4 of you. Split them up as you see fit. Probably one each is the best way to do it. What a great session, and what a great way to now launch into morning tea, then our parallel streams. Go down and say hello to all our sponsors again, including the good people from Bidem and all of our sponsors in the exhibition hall. Run round with the app, get scanned, go in the running for all the prizes that we'll give away this afternoon after afternoon tea, before always the landmark AusCert mass speed debate to wrap us up. Enjoy your morning tea. Don't forget to take all your stuff now, because I'm going to split this room up. We'll see you back here after afternoon tea.